Most politicians in Washington will tell you they know what's best for your neighborhood. But how many of them actually run one? Joe Hathaway has, and that's the entire pitch. He's not a career politician. He's not a former congressman trying to make a comeback. He's a mayor from a small town in Morris County, New Jersey. And he thinks that's exactly what Congress needs more of. His name is Joe Hathaway, and he's running for Congress in New Jersey's 11th district. Joe Hathaway grew up in Clifton, New Jersey, a working-class city in Passaic County, about 15 miles outside of New York City. His dad was an Army veteran. His mom was a preschool teacher. He's described his upbringing as middle class, the kind of household where hard work wasn't optional. It was just how things were done. He captained both the football and track teams at Clifton High School. Good enough that when he got to Yale University, one of the most prestigious colleges in the country, by the way, he played football and earned all Ivy League honors. Now, in case you didn't know, Yale is an Ivy League school. These are a group of 8 elite universities in the Northeast, historically considered some of the most selective and prestigious in the country. Think Harvard, Princeton, Yale. Getting in is extremely competitive. Hathaway graduated from Yale in 2009 with a degree in political science. Right out of college, Hathaway went into government, but not by running for office. He started as an aide to then Governor Chris Christie. What does a governor's aide do? Think of it of like being on the support staff for the most powerful executive in the state. You're helping manage schedules, communications, events, learning how government actually operates from the inside. After his time in state government, Hathaway moved into the private sector. He spent over a decade working in corporate communications and strategy, specifically in healthcare and finance. His most recent role was Group Director for Corporate Strategy at a company called Real Chemistry, a healthcare communications firm. So his background is a mix: government experience on the inside and private sector experience on the outside. In 2022, Hathaway and his wife Whitney moved to Randolph Township, a suburb in Morris County with about 25,000 residents. He got involved locally pretty quickly. He joined the Randolph Recreation Advisory Committee, and basically a local board that oversees parks and recreational programs for the community. Then, in May 2022, a seat opened up on the Township Council when a council member retired. Hathaway was appointed to fill it. That November, voters elected him to finish out the term. Now, what's a township council? In New Jersey, a lot of towns are governed by a small elected council rather than a single mayor. The council makes decisions together on local issues, budgets, zoning, infrastructure, and public safety. In 2025, his fellow council members selected him to serve as mayor, a rotating one-year position in Randolph's form of government. So from appointed council member in 2022 to mayor in 2025, that's a pretty fast rise in local politics. Hathaway's entire congressional campaign is built around his record in Randolph. So let's look at what he actually did. Roads. Under his leadership, Randolph resurfaced 28 roads. This sounds unglamorous and incredibly boring, but for residents dealing with potholes and deteriorating streets every day, it's genuinely meaningful local governance. I know we've all dealt with that before. He also worked with the State Department of Transportation to advance safety improvements on Route 10. Route 10 is the main road running through Randolph. That was a bipartisan effort with the Murphy administration, which is notable because Murphy is from a different party than Hathaway. Now, bipartisan means both parties, or multiple parties, not just one. Police. The Randolph Police Department had been understaffed for years. Hathaway's tenure saw 5 new officers hired. Bringing staffing to its proper level, he also oversaw the deployment of body-worn cameras for officers, something many communities have pushed for in recent years as a tool for police accountability. Housing. This one is important because it speaks directly to one of his policy positions. New Jersey has a law, rooted in a series of court decisions called the Mount Laurel Doctrine, that requires every municipality to provide its fair share of affordable housing. The state calculates how many units each town needs to build. Randolph was assigned an obligation of 355 units. Hathaway negotiated that number down to 28, a reduction of about 92%. His argument was that forcing that much dense development on a suburban town would overwhelm local roads, schools, and emergency services. Critics would say that resisting affordable housing development is part of what makes housing unaffordable across New Jersey. It's a genuine policy debate right now. Finances. His campaign says Randolph delivered over $1.1 million in taxpayer savings under his leadership. He also helped attract more than 24 new businesses in the township. Hathaway announced his campaign in October 2025, making him one of the first candidates in this race. His core argument is simple. Washington is broken because it's full of people who are more interested in fighting than governing. Mayors don't have that luxury. As he put it, when you're running a town, you can't afford to be ideological. The roads either get paved or they don't. The police department is either staffed or it isn't. Results are visible. Residents notice. His pitch is that Congress needs more of that mindset and less of the partisan theatrics, which is a politically correct way of saying Washington needs less arguing and more doing. I mean, who can't agree with that? So what does he actually want to do in Congress? Housing and affordability. His top campaign promise is eliminating federal taxes for first-time homebuyers. The idea is that one of the biggest barriers to buying a home, especially for younger people, is the upfront costs. Removing the federal tax burden on that first purchase would put more money back in the buyer's pocket. On broader housing policy, he argues that the federal government needs to stop pushing one-size-fits-all mandates on local communities and let towns figure out what works for their specific infrastructure. Healthcare. He wants to lower healthcare costs. But his approach is different from government-run solutions. He wants to cut out what he calls unnecessary middlemen in the healthcare industry, specifically targeting pharmacy benefit managers. These people are also known as PBMs, Pharmacy Benefit Managers. They are the companies that act as go-betweens amongst insurance companies, drug manufacturers, and pharmacies. They negotiate drug prices. Critics across both parties argue that PBMs often drive up costs rather than lower them, and that they benefit financially from keeping prices high. Targeting PBMs has actually become a rare bipartisan issue in Congress, which means both parties actually agree on something. Here's a cool little fun fact. Mark Cuban has been a big advocate in hurting their pockets with his cost-plus drug company by doing exactly that and cutting out the middleman. Transportation. He wants a serious federal investment in commuter rail. Modern stations, better service, improved roads. For a district that has a lot of commuters into New York City, this is a local priority that resonates. He supports what he calls a balanced energy policy, meaning a mix of nuclear power, natural gas, solar, and wind. He's not calling for an immediate shift away from fossil fuels, but he's also not dismissing renewable energy. He's taking a measured position here. Compared to the national rhetoric, he says communities need to be safe and that removing dangerous criminals is important. But he's also pushed back on one specific situation in his district where a federal immigration detention facility was proposed without local input, which means the government wanted to put an immigration detention facility without talking to the city or town that they were putting it in. He argued that the facility would have put unsustainable strain on local water, sewer, roads, and emergency services, and that federal agencies would need to work with local communities, not steamroll them. Overall economic philosophy. His approach to the economy is what you'd expect from a traditional center-right candidate. Reduce taxes, limit the expansion of government programs, and lower costs through competition and deregulation rather than new spending. His phrase is, how can we lower costs? Not just add more subsidies that put a band-aid on things. Here's the honest reality of Hathaway's situation. New Jersey's 11th district leans toward one party. In the last presidential election, the Democratic candidate won the district by nearly 9 percentage points. The previous Congresswoman, Mikey Sherrill, held the seat for several years before becoming governor. Hathaway is trying to flip a district that historically hasn't gone his way. His strategy seems to be appeal to voters who are frustrated with the current direction of things regardless of party, emphasize local governing credentials over ideology, and hope that the district responds to a candidate who talks about results rather than politics. So essentially, his bet is that voters are tired enough of politics being the way that they are to take a chance on a local mayor. Whether that's enough, the voters of New Jersey's 11th will decide on April 16th. Now, to recap. Joe Hathaway grew up the son of an Army veteran and a preschool teacher. Played football at Yale, worked his way through state government and private sector, moved to a suburb in New Jersey, got involved locally, and worked his way up to mayor. Now he's one election away from Congress, running on the argument that Washington needs less ideology and more people who know how to actually run something. Whatever you think of his politics, the resume is real. As always, we're not here to tell you who to vote for. We're here to make sure you actually know who you're voting for. Because here at Law It Up, it's your laws, your vote, your power.